You know, I'm not a monster.
She begins with denial. I'm not a monster. I just did a bad thing. But what does that even mean? Is this a confession or is it an excuse? And how can someone admit to striking the match that killed 6 people, yet insist she never meant for anyone to die? Tonight we dive into a case where truth and lies blur into one chilling story.
Not a bad person. I done a bad thing.
The state said you and Roberson were lovers, and that when you felt jilted, you lashed out by setting the fire. You say it was a cry for help and a way to escape a desperate situation, an abusive situation.
A live-in babysitter sets the house ablaze and then escapes, killing 4 young children and their parents.
I did it. I struck that match and I set that fire. But it wasn't to kill anybody. It wasn't. Those innocent babies.
Michael, Dale, Gary, and Rita, all choked to death by that smoke in terror.
I ran to the bedroom and I told him the house is on fire. God help me.
As she describes the children choking on smoke, she breaks down, yet in the same breath insists she tried to save them. Was this guilt speaking or performance? Question to audience. If she truly wanted them safe, why light the fire at all?
I tried to get them out.
Almost 50 years later, Indiana's longest-serving female inmate, Sarah Cindy White, answers for setting that fatal fire and saving herself.
You got yourself out the window.
I fell out. I'm assuming I can't remember.
How do you explain the fact that you remember everything up to then and then everything after that?
I can't explain it. I really can't.
3 psychiatrists told the court that you're a pathological liar. You lied on the polygraph you took.
Mm-hmm.
You lied at the sentencing. You lied about setting the fire.
Yes, I did.
Psychiatrists called her a pathological liar. She lied on polygraphs, in court, at sentencing. And yet, here she is, almost 50 years later, asking us to believe her now. Would you?
Polygraph you took.
Mm-hmm.
You lied at the sentencing. You lied about setting the fire.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But am I lying today? No.
I set the house afire, not meaning to kill anybody. God knows I didn't mean to kill him.
Now, she's making accusations of her own and pointing the finger at one of her victims.
He says, if you run or try to get away from me, he says, I will drive by and I will kill her.
But the only evidence is her own word.
Would you believe you?
Yes.
Would you forgive you?
No.
Would you free you?
That question slices right through. Would you believe you? She says yes. Would you forgive you? She says no. The contradictions only grow deeper. Is Cindy White confessing to murder or rewriting her past? If you want more real breakdowns of cases like this, subscribe now so you don't miss the next deep dive.
That's a good question.
I'm just outside Indianapolis, heading to meet a woman who's been in prison for longer than most Americans have been alive. And yet, a half-century of incarceration isn't enough to live down her one and only crime, the murders of a family of 6 by arson. Now, more than anything, Sarah Cindy White says she just wants to be believed. With growing calls to release Indiana's longest-serving female inmate, White has a controversial story to tell.
Thank you, guys.
I want to hear her out and get a glimpse into the mind of this convicted murderer. Once a known liar, can she ever be believed?
We're really here to understand the mindset and motivations behind your actions so long ago. It's my job to embody the skepticism of the viewer. I have a duty to probe the way you would want me
Right.
to
Journalist
if
makes
you
it
were
clear.
on the other
He
side of
isn't
the
here to
TV
sympathize,
trying to
but to
figure out
probe,
what to think.
to ask the
Does that make
questions
sense?
you at
Yes.
home would be asking. Because this case isn't just about what happened. It's about whether we can ever trust the woman who started the fire.
White is 67 years old, wheelchair-bound and frail.
Why are you here today talking to us, Cindy?
And there's also a unique sensitivity at play that calls for a gentle tact.
I'm here today because there are little Cindys out there going through what I went through. And if they hear my story and they can find other ways to handle the situation that I did, they don't have to end up in here.
White says her story begins with child sexual abuse.
It happened to you at a time when most victims suffered in silence,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I lived the abuse that my father gave me, from being a daddy's girl to being daddy's special little girl. And that's when the secret started.
That's also when the damage started.
Yes. It just went too far to where his hand was going up my shorts. And that just was not right. But I loved him. That was my dad at the age of 8. He says, this is our little secret.
She positions
White
herself
says
as
her
a
father's
cautionary
home was a
tale,
living hell,
a voice for abused
and she began
children.
inventing ways
But
to
is this
avoid it.
redemption or manipulation? The question hangs heavy. Is Cindy White trying to warn us or win us over?
And at one point, you took to pretend fainting.
The weekends were horrible. You know, the cyclone would happen in the house and he would just, and I was like, I can't do it, you know, to have a tooth knocked out and, you know, it was just one thing after another. It got to the point that around Friday,
Yeah.
I would either be delivering my newspapers or something like that, and my last newspaper would be delivered, and I knew what I had to go home to. And it just got to the point that I would make myself fall.
And it happened on Friday to avoid the weekend
Yeah.
terror.
You know, I was faking falling off my bike. One day I fell, and my leg was actually numb. I couldn't feel a thing. And later on, they diagnosed it as hysterical paralysis.
Around 16,
Yes.
it got so bad that you were institutionalized for
Yeah.
almost a whole year.
Yeah, for
Right.
10 months.
They diagnosed you for an extreme stress condition known as conversion reaction, basically a psychological injury with physical manifestations.
They never explained that to me.
There was also stories. Does that ring true to you? Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. But I've never heard this before.
All of this
Yeah.
is from the case record.
You're right. You're
It
right.
sounds like a compulsion. Do you think that that's a coping mechanism that your brain sort of devised to reconcile the world that you lived in?
It could. That's very, very, very possible.
Is that still something that you want to do at times? Could that be part of the lasting damage you've sustained, that sometimes your mind, you know, bends what happens in order to protect yourself emotionally?
No, nothing like that now. In fact, I'm a very straightforward person.
It's also totally relevant to the case because it cuts against your credibility, right?
As she was coming of age, White languished in a psychiatric hospital. But one local family had become a saving grace, the Robersons.
You had already met the Robersons.
Yes, I met them on my paper route.
So they watched you grow up in a way.
Yeah. And in fact, they would ask me to babysit a couple of times.
She says Charles and Carol Roberson had even taken her in as a younger teen, when
This
she
is
needed
where her
safe
story
harbor
takes a
from her own
disturbing
family,
turn.
and she would
At 8
help
years
care
old,
for
she
their 4
claims
young
the
children.
abuse began. A father she adored, transforming from daddy's girl to daddy's special girl. The secret, she says, that broke her forever. But after decades of proven lies, Can we believe this?
At that point, by all appearances, they seem like well-meaning, decent folk.
Yeah, they were. It was fun. And it was just wonderful. And that's when I started fantasizing of Charlie because he was being kind to me. He was, you're pretty. You know, look at you. You are a really pretty woman, you know, and I have never been told that. And so therefore, I was infatuated with him.
How old were you at that point?
I was 15.
That's where the romantic feelings started.
They did.
Even before you were institutionalized.
Yes, yes.
They kept in touch with you when you went to LaRue.
They did. They would come see me.
They would even come visit. Really?
Yes.
White says she was finally released from the psychiatric hospital just as she was turning 18, and soon landed in the one place she'd felt safe, the Roberson home. By then, according to investigators, White and Charles Roberson were exchanging these sexually charged letters. October 1975, the month she moved in. She tells him, "I wish I could have you all to myself," and that she wants him to be her first. He writes her, "You're at a legal age when you can have sex with me with no problem."
Did you fall in love with him?
In a child's mind, yeah.
You
In an
were-
adult mind, no.
You were 18 at that point.
I was still a child. I was so damaged. And he would flirt with me and he would tell me things that everybody wants to hear.
Can you describe it to me, what you felt for Mr. Roberson?
I got excited when I seen him. I would giggle when he would say something, you know, and as I think back now, it would be just, you know, a kid thing. I didn't want sex really at the time. I just wanted someone to tell me I was pretty, to tell me that I amounted to something more than a piece of ass.
You wanted love.
Yeah, something that I've never received other than from the kids.
Is it possible, in your damaged mind at the time, that you were over-interpreting some of these things that he would say?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
And then, according to you, things suddenly get very dark.
Yeah.
White alleges both Charles and Carol Roberson became her lovers and then her captors.
It first started off with he got porn. The three of us sat there and I sat and picked with my fingers and they kept telling me, look up at the screen.
Both of them?
Yes.
It was to the point that I didn't know what else to do.
But did it never cross your mind, Cindy, that if I light this match, I could kill everyone in the house?
I didn't contemplate on it that long.
Cindy White was committed to a psychiatric hospital and diagnosed as prone to dysfunction, the Robersons.
You've described two very different experiences in their home.
Yes.
Right? You said, oh, if I could imagine what Disneyland would be like, that would be it because I was so loved.
Yeah, I felt it. The kids, oh my, you know, they were just, you know, there's Aunt Cindy, there's Aunt Cindy. And I mean, they would come running. They'd see me coming on my bike.
The four of them.
The four, and you know how puppies are when they see you and they're like jumping up and down, wanting to be
So
up.
excited.
That's exactly what I got.
Wow.
And I loved every bit of it.
The Robersons' young children, Michael, Dale, Gary, and Rita, had known White for
The kids, we would go, the school wasn't very far from the house, and I would take them at least once a day. That was their little reward for being good. And we would go and play on the recess
Playground.
activities, yeah.
Yeah.
And we play in the sprinkler before it got too cold. And, you know, little kid stuff.
But White says soon after she arrived, the Robersons' home somehow transformed from a safe haven into a hellhole.
And then, according to you, things suddenly get very dark.
Yeah. It first started off with he got porn. Charlie would say, come and watch this with me. And I said, I don't want to see that. And he grabbed me. And he grabbed me hard. He said, yes, you are. You're going to sit here and watch it.
White's account of this 3-month-long stay with the Robersons describes a litany of outlandish horrors and abuse, now impossible for her victims to refute.
And I'm like, Carol will die if she hears of this. And then one day she walks in and she says, what you doing?
There's also a story about forcing you to have sex with an animal.
A dog. He wanted to videotape it. And he dictated exactly what it was that I was supposed to do. I was supposed to allow the dog to lick me.
The family pet?
Yeah, he was a family pet.
I take the issue of sexual abuse very seriously. And it is not my practice to question the accounts of victims. You obviously have no reason to lie about what happened in your home with your father. However, you do have a reason to lie about the Robersons. They were among your murder victims, and the worse you can make them look, the more sympathy and consideration you might get. Is that fair?
It's fair what you're saying, but it's not, no, it's not the truth. I would not rake someone's name through the coals like that. I would not falsely accuse anybody of anything, especially something of that nature.
Obviously, they're not here to defend or speak for themselves.
I know that.
Right? Nor do we have any other information that implicates them in wrongdoing apart from your own accusations that came many years after the fact. At no point between your arrest and a decade or so later did you ever note for the record or even tell your own attorneys about the abuse by the Robersons.
I clammed up. I was scared. I was ashamed.
You also say there were some very brutal acts of intimidation, including a chilling story about a kitten.
Yes, the kitten.
What happened there?
I said, I'm gonna go see my grandmother. And he said, you're not going anywhere. And he grabbed me and he pushed me against the wall, and the kids are screaming. And so he let go of me and he went out and got the kitten. He said, I'm gonna show you what I'm about. And he said, and jerked the head off.
What do you mean? He literally removed the head from the
kitten was
body?
like this. He had the kitten like this. He took the head and he ripped it and he pulled the head off the kitten. It was horrible. And that was one of the first times that I ran.
White says to prevent her from leaving the home, Charles Roberson threatened to murder her sister, who lived nearby.
He takes me down my grandmother's street. And my baby sister, which is Christy, she's 4. She's out in the front yard, she's playing. And he says, if you run or try to get away from me, he says, I will drive by and I will kill her. And I believed him. I mean, look what he did to the cat. And I said, I wasn't coming over here. And he said, yes, you were. And he slapped me. He backhanded me.
This is a man who
I loved.
Along with his wife.
Yes, who I felt safe with. But it just started, I mean, everything just started unraveling.
These explicit letters were found by investigators dated during the first 2 months of White's stay with the Robersons. In them, she makes no reference to any problems apart from Charles's marriage. Still, White now claims that during the 3rd and final month she lived with the family, she was desperate for a way out. That's when, she says, late one night, a dangerous idea came to her.
So I go on to bed, and then we get the phone call in the middle of the night. It's your grandmother's house caught on fire, but they all got out and everybody's okay. And I said, that's it. If I set a small fire, one to smoke it up to where everybody gets out, I can leave.
So, by your account, all this leads up to New Year's Eve, right? December 31st, 1975. Cindy, in as much detail as you can remember after all these years, tell me what happened that night.
On New Year's Eve, 1975, an 18-year-old live-in babysitter crouched beside the family Christmas tree with a matchbook and a terrible idea. Asleep in their bedrooms were Charles and Carol Roberson and their 4 small children, Michael, Dale, Gary, and Rita.
New Year's Eve, right? December 31st, 1975. Now, this is going back 50 years or so. How much can you remember about that period?
I remember everything.
You do?
I do. I've got a very good memory as far as that goes.
Cindy, in as much detail as you can remember after all these years, tell me what happened that night.
It was below freezing, snowing, and we had went shopping, and I had gotten a pair of the footy pajamas. We had all gotten some throughout the day. And I had those on, and I got ready to unplug the Christmas tree because they had went on to bed. And I said, that's it. If I set a small fire, one to smoke it up to where everybody gets out, I can leave.
At that point, that you're so desperate, you're about to light the house on fire.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been better to just walk out the door and take your chances?
I couldn't take my chances with my kid, my family, because he showed me what he was doing. He showed me what he was about. And I prayed to God before I struck that match. And I said, God, if this is your will, let it happen. But if it's not your will, please don't let it happen.
That's not really how God works, is it?
Now I know that. I know that now. When I struck that match and it went up the walls so fast, I ran to the bedroom and I got Charlie and I told him the house is on fire. God help me. We went to Gary and Sissy's room and I got them, and Carolyn went to the back bedroom and she got in there and I had Gary and Sissy and they pulled away from me and I couldn't, the smoke was so thick that I couldn't find them. So we go in the bedroom, and Carol tells me to open the window, and it was a larger window, and I tried opening it, and it wouldn't. It just wouldn't, and the smoke was, everybody was just... And she told me to get up on the top bunk, because there was this high window. And she said, I'm going to hand you the kids, open it, and I'm going to hand you the kids.
Were the kids all there in the room at that point?
I couldn't find Gary and Sissy because the smoke was too thick. So I got up on the top bunk, and the next thing I know it.
On New Year's Eve, 1975, an 18-year-old live-in babysitter crouched beside the family Christmas tree with a matchbook.
And then the chilling idea arrives. She admits she thought of setting a small fire, just enough smoke to escape. But that small fire killed 6 people. The line between desperation and destruction was crossed forever. New Year's Eve, 1975. The night 6 lives ended, and Cindy White's story of truth and lies began.
New Year's Eve, right? December 31st, 1975. Now, this is going back 50 years or so. How much can you remember about that period?
I remember everything.
You do?
I do. I've got a very good memory as far as that goes.
Cindy, in as much detail as you can remember after all these years, tell me what happened that night.
It was below freezing, snowing, and we had went shopping, and I had gotten a pair of the footy pajamas. We had all gotten some throughout the day. And I had those on, and I got ready to unplug the Christmas tree because they had went on to bed. And I said, that's it. If I set a small fire, one to smoke it up to where everybody gets out, I can leave.
At that point, that you're so desperate, you're about to light the house on fire.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been better to just walk out the door and take your chances?
I couldn't take my chances with my kid, my family, because he showed me what he was doing. He showed me what he was about. And I prayed to God before I struck that match. And I said, God, if this is your will, let it happen. But if it's not your will, please don't let it happen.
That's not really how God works, is it?
Now I know that. I know that now. When I struck that match and it went up the wall so fast, I ran to the bedroom and I got Charlie and I told him the house is on fire. God help me. We went to Gary and Sissy's room and I got them, and Carolyn went to the back bedroom and she got in there and I had Gary and Sissy and they pulled away from me and the smoke was so thick that I couldn't find them. So we go in the bedroom, and Carol tells me to open the window, and it was a larger window, and I tried opening it, and it wouldn't. It just wouldn't, and the smoke was, everybody was just... And she told me to get up on the top bunk, because there was this high window. And she said, I'm going to hand you the kids, open it, and I'm going to hand you the kids.
Were the kids all there in the room at that point?
I couldn't find Gary and Sissy because the smoke was too thick. So I got up on...
And remember, your support helps us bring hidden stories like this to light. Hit that subscribe button